Today we will discuss here about environmental impact of power plant. In previous lecture we have discussed about power plant economics. Today we are discussing here environmental effect of power plant, especially thermal power plant. Okay, that is what this environmental concern. Now there are two top major problem in the world, that is climate change and also CO2 emission. CO2 emission is the major concern. You can see the graph is going very high, steep actually between 2000 to 2010. Now it has slightly studies that still it is keeping on increasing. Okay, and this then effect will be the global warming, and then again this one sea level rise. These are the issues with the CO2 emission, because CO2 emission if it increase, it will cause the one more major concern with the CO2 emission is that is ozone layer depreciation. Those are the issues with this CO2 emission. Any of that will be studied in detail. Other is the major energy concern. Majority of power plant they work on this coal based power plant. These are and also one more thing, this coal is a finite source of energy. It is going to be over actually. This is the estimated, it was done very long back around 2008 it was done, but now the again these figures have increasing the global what they have said in 1861, but it has crossed almost 2000 this one. In India itself you can see what they have mentioned in this case, it is around 61 billion tons, but recent survey what they say around 308 million tons of coal is available in India. The major concern with that coal, this CO2 emission, because we are converting the carbon into carbon dioxide, that is world average, it is around 964 tons, that is 0.96 ton per kilowatt hour. Okay, that is the megawatt hour. Oil is around 726 and gas is 484. Anyhow, we will see in detail with the India and major concern about this one of the time around 2035. It is go up into around 28 trillion kilowatt hour, that is the estimation of the electrical energy generation. Again still in that you can see the coal play a major role, but one more thing is more renewable energy is also overtaking, because the governments, the present government initiated almost any of that we will discuss in the next slide. This is regarding the carbon emission. You can see here India we have the less carbon emission, we can say compared to the other countries, and also per capita, that is a carbon emission per capita is our India is the lowest. We can say that is 0.21 compared to the developing countries or developed countries. But China you can see around 0.58 to 0.98, and US you can see that is 5.41. The major this one difference is because their per capita energy consumption is very high. US is almost around 12,000 kilowatt hour per person per year, but whereas in India it is hardly 20 kilowatt hour per person per year. That is what we have carbon emission per capita energy. This is one is much lower than the world average. Yeah, this also you can see the carbon factor, and with respect to Indian energy economy, you can see that it is raised to 0.3 to almost 0.6, but still our this one is much below than the China and US. This is the energy consumption. This is also around 2010 figure, almost around 21,000 kilowatt hour per year. But again, up to this one, almost we have crossed around 30,000 terabyte hour per year in the energy generation, and then CO2 emission accordingly it is around 28,000 million tons. This is the world average, and also in that you can see that is the major concern of CO2 emission is through the power generation. Okay, emission generation from coal you can see, which is almost around 12,000 as of 2010. This is the Indian scenario. In Indian scenario, that is CO2 emission is almost 1600 million tons as of 2010 as per the IEA reported. But again it has increased because after around 95 the increase in the steel. Now as per the peak demand, and this one if is concerned, you can see the peak demand is increased. It is increased almost, it is around 177 gigawatt is the peak demand, and the deficit between the supply and demand is also come down because of the government's initiation. To set up many of this one, you can alter the supercritical. This is 1 megawatt power plant, almost around 5 megawatt power projects have come, that is consisting of around 8,800 megawatt into 5, that is 4,000 megawatt in a single station. Initiation by the government of India, and also a lot of this one private people, private generating companies, and then again renewable energy system. With that our peak demand and supply, the gap has reduced almost, it is around 0.8. That is not a business. And similarly regarding the energy supply, all the deficit and the demand is almost, it has come to 0.6, and many of the power plant are posted this one. That they are talking out age because of the non availability of the demand. Now this is the scenario. The installation capacity in India, this is as per the August 31st, but now as of now it has increased to around 374 gigawatt. Another 2000 megawatt has been added now for the last 3-4 months. Okay, now in that why I am showing this is, you can see the coal and lignites based power plant is almost around 53.3%. Okay, gas is 0.7, oil it has come down because oil based power plant, almost oil based power plant they have converted into natural gas. That is one of the example is in Tata Power, that is 500 megawatt oil based power plant is fully converted into natural gas. And then hydro is around 12.3, nuclear is slow phase, I think it is 1.8%, renewable is the measure. This one what you can say almost around 89 gigawatts power is being generated. That is what our Prime Minister is by 2024. It will around 175 gigawatt our plan to set up the renewable energy around 35. I think around 2030 or 35 we are going to our renewable energy is going to cross the thermal power plant. Any of that planning report is there, any of that we will discuss. And regarding the generation additional capacity, that is what I was telling you, can see here still one additional thermal is the measure, but after you see that around 2014 onwards lots of renewable energy power plant have come. That is what the change in this one can see here. The green has increased. It is mainly because governments initiated to go for renewable energy, because our Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister and the France Prime Minister, they have started this ISA, that is International Solar Alliance, is that 121 countries have come there, initiated by our Prime Minister, and this our countries, they are going to train them and then give technical support for setting up of the solar PV power plant. Okay, to train those engineers from overseas, that is for the 121 countries. That is what I was telling you, can see here. The coal generation is around 201 gigawatt, renewable is 79, hydro, okay, now by 21-22, that is what the other day our Prime Minister has mentioned, that in one of the conference he mentioned by 2022 we are going to renewable energy will be go up to the 175 gigawatt. You can see here by 26-27 itself, you can see our plan. It is to go for the renewable energy more than coal based power plant, that is 275 gigawatt. To reduce this will help controlling our environmental issue. So the major concern of this one emission, in which respect to India average is 0.99 kg per kilowatt. Okay, so SO2 is slightly on the higher side in this, but still it is less from the Indian coals. And N2O, just let me tell it based on the data available from the internet I have got, and with the literature survey I have just calculated the major concern about CO2, because you see a person, you see how he will also release the CO2, that is around 42 gram per hour, will come to around 1 per day. To compensate that, because the tree what they do is that absorb the CO2 and then they release the oxygen to compensate that 42 grams per hour of a person. Actually numbers of trees means, by considering around 125 crores people, for that the person, that is 18 trees per person is required to compensate that CO2 emission. Okay, for that, to compensate our pollution, at least 23,400 million trees are required to compensate. This is the general ecological balance. Earlier days what was happening, whatever the human beings, they use exhale CO2 in the being absorbed by the trees, and they used to give out the oxygen that was taken by the human being. That is what the ecological cycle, it was balanced. Now because of industrial and technical upgradation and the addition of lot of transportation sector, electric vehicle, power plants, and all this CO2 emission has increased. That is what I am just comparing with the thermal power plant. You see CO2, the India average, consider all the power station, that is what we carried out the study. Also compare this one, considering all the even 60 megawatt plant up to 800 mega plant, the average is around 1.05 kg per kilowatt hour, considering around 219 gigawatt of coal power. You see it is almost around 2.3 lakhs ton of CO2 is being liberated in the atmosphere. So, here fossil fuels, diesel fuel, this is a gas turbine nuclear power plant, SO2, these parameters of gas removing from thermal power plant. So, this is gaseous removing from fossil fuels, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, carbon dioxide, particulates matter, thermal pollutants from diesel power plant, carbon monoxide, hydrogen chloride, sulfur oxide, nitrogen oxide, carbon dioxide, particulate matters, smoke from gas turbine, SO2, NOx, CO2, ESC and thermal pollutants. After that, nuclear power plant release radioactive waste, thermal pollutions. This is total removing out the power plant, gaseous removing from power plant. So, here the impact of here so many which is on the environmental. So, emit 118 million metric ton of CO2 per year, pollution of nearly 9 million days globally. A typical passenger vehicle emits about 4.6 metric tons of carbon dioxide per year, gaseous which make a far less than 1% of the atmosphere, having much greater influence on both short term weather and long term climates. We can see in this figure incoming solar radiation, this is radiated out to face from the earth. See here, this is our atmosphere where this is our earth. See here, the from sun rays coming from the sun to the earth absorb this atmosphere by greenhouse gases. So, see here infrared radiation from surface, the waste abundant gases H2O, CO2, CH4, SO2, N2O all have an important properties. These gases have the ability to absorb thermal energy emitted by the earth and thus are available to warm the atmosphere. This warming is what is popularly called greenhouse effect. These gases are called greenhouse gases and without them the surface of the earth would be about 30 degrees Celsius cooler and far too cool for life as we know it to exist. On the other hand, these greenhouse gases are so thermal potent that even proportionally small amount can cause the earth lower atmospheric temperature to rise. This is energy balance of earth. So, radiation come from or sun rays come from sun. Sun radiation includes ultraviolet visible and invisible rays. Most ultraviolet rays absorbed by ozone in the star atmosphere. About 50% of the solar radiation reaching the atmosphere is absorbed by the earth's surface which warms up. Some visible solar radiation is reflected particularly by clouds. Some of the IR emitted by the earth is absorbed by the gaseous in the transfer which warm it up. Some IR radiation escape from the earth and cool it down, balancing the absorbed solar radiation. IR radiations from the earth, this is energy balance of the earth. After the CO2 emission by production sectors, see from the production sector, electricity and heat production in this phase 41.2% CO2 generated, other energy industry on use for 5.2% industry and construction, 25.4%, transport 22.3%, other sector not residential 4.6% and residential 6.2%. This is the CO2 generation or emission from or production of the CO2 from various sector. Everyone reach metric tons CO2 globally. 2010 Earth atmosphere temperature increased by 1 degree Celsius and it will increase by 2 degree Celsius, 5.9 to 5 megaton CO2 New York area in 1980. This is CO2 emission 1751 to 2014, fossil fuels and cement production in USA 2011, global CO2 emission other 30%, China 28%, USA 16%, EU 28%, Japan 4%, Russia 6%, India 6% primary greenhouse gases. Water vapor H2O greenhouse effect continuous contribution 60%, CO2 26%, ozone 8%, methane, nitrogen oxide that is N2O another 6%. Greenhouse gases and climate changes can be reduced, eliminated CO2 production, calculate CO2 production by individual person, CO2 emission capture and stored CO2 captured, large CO2 emission source facility. Offshore CO2 injection facility, offshore injection CO2 storage, onshore injection CO2 injection facility, underground aquifer. Now we are going to discuss environmental effect on thermal power plant. See here, thermal pollution is the harmful increase in water temperature in stream, river, lakes and occupationally coastal ocean water. It is the degradation of water quantity by any process that change ambient temperature. A temperature increase small as 1 to 2 degree Celsius, about 2 to 4 Fahrenheit degree can kill fish, shellfishes and plant or drive them out in favor of other species, often with undesirable effect. Cause the major source of thermal pollution are discharge of it water and hot waste material into water bodies from nuclear power plant, industrial influence, domestic sewages, hydroelectric power, coal fired power plant, thermal shocks and other causes are deforestation, soil erosion. This is another cause. So effect elevated temperature typically decrease the level of dissolved oxygen of water, increase the metabolic rate of aquatic animals as enzyme activity, resulting in the organic consuming more food in short time, which increases their need for oxygen. High temperature limits oxygen depreciation into deeper water, contributing to anabolic condition. Diagrammatic representation of thermal pollution. See here, low dissolved oxygen decreases fish pollution, alter food web, suffocated fish. Thermal pollution we can see here effect on various species by thermal pollution. Control measures energy chips, less nuclear power and shoreline deforestation prevents soil erosion, cooling ponds, man-made bodies designed for cooling by evaporation, convection and radiation. Cooling towers which transfer waste into the atmosphere through evaporation and all heat transfer. Progeneration of process where waste is recycled for domestic and industrial heating purpose. Smoke for mixing with smoke that's are attributes to increase the air pollution during the period with 7 pounds in SO2, 3 pounds in smoke than before. The peak in the number of the coincidence with the peak in both smoke and SO2 pollution level. SO2 and smoke level by death rate we can see here graph health effect in London 1952 respective Large number of deaths occur due to influence exhale in asthma, bronchitis, tuberculosis, short term decrease in the breath, ability increase in the chest pain, inflammation of lungs and damage to respiratory cells, permanent lungs damage and reduced life quality due to ozone, increased number of asthma attack into the nitrogen dioxide, cardiovascular effect, heart failure and a lack of oxygen in the bloodstream in those with increased heart diseases due to carbon monoxide. Effect of air pollution in general, the air we breathe to 26,000 times per day contains nitrogen, oxygen, CO2, water, argon and other traces gases and volume of 14,000 liters. Vegetation is affected with when absorbed those soil and water, wildlife and animal can get affected, deposition of water bodies affecting its qualities and organization in water. Severity and symptoms experimental depends on pollutants, its content in air, length of exposure and individual sensitivity, organic nature of particular matter could vary. Health effect in general, healthy and individual may not notice effect from the air pollution, except when the pollution is very high. Individuals who have asthma, heart concern, lung disease may experience distress and other health effect even the lower level of pollution. Annual death, air pollution 23,000, drunk drive 17,000, murder 20,000. Air pollution 12.5 lakhs death in India, 17 reported main pollutants ozone, particulates especially permanent 2.5, air breakdown toxic, mercury, diesel exhaust, particulates, smoking, indoor air pollution, respiratory diseases, cardio diseases, several effects on other bodies, hearts, alter cardiac automatic function, increase diastatic systematic suspensibility, alter cardio respiration, increase microcardial lungs infection, inflammation of oxidative trans, accelerate progression, increase respiratory symptoms, effect reflex, reduce lungs function, blood altered, increase and transported particulates like that, systematic inflammation, oxidative trans, increase CRP like that. So, this is infection on the body, human bodies after the carbon dioxide PHB bind with CO2 and or from carbon hemoglobin, prevent O2 transport to tissues, hyperbaric binding, Hb in 250 times greater than the O2, brains, heart, muscles and sensitive to hypoxia. 80% of CO2 Hb level leads to death, 60% loss consciousness, 40% to confuse and collapse upon exercise, 30% to headache, fatigue, impaired judgment, 5 to 20% to visual preparation manual, reception manual, learning, complex tasks 2.5 to 4.5 decreases exercise capacity in the human health. Important for those who renewable to cardiac condition, other nervous system effect are disturbance in hand, eyes, can report to cause low brain weight, ozone, violet organism component, react with sunlight from NO2 by production of high temperature and atmospheric automobile consumption, short term effect, breathing difficulty during outdoor activity, shortness of breath headache, throat and lung irritation, long term effect, premature aging, the lungs, decrease the lungs function, worse symptoms, low asthma, inflammation and damage of lungs after the sulfur dioxide, SO2 in water, soluble colorless gases with the sharp odor that react with air borne solid particles, irritation the eye and ear passages. The most common source is burning of fossil and fuel consumption, smelting, manufacturing of sulfuric acid, converts of wood pulp of paper, production of element sulfur, coal burning about 50% of annual global emission, when oil burn accounting for a further 25 to 30%. The nature source is organ. SO2 pollution reduction. In this chapter, a number of possible techniques for reducing emission of sulfur oxide from power plant are discussed and evaluated. They include improved efficiency. So, the conclusion is to improve efficiency of conversion of fuel to energy. This would reduce pollution emission per unit of electric generation, shift to nuclear generation as rapidly as possible since no sulfur oxide is emitted from nuclear plant, shift fossil fuel plant to lower sulfur fuels, removal of sulfur from coal before combustion or of the sulfur oxide after combustion, but before it enters the stack. The techniques to be considered are used for the power generation, coal preparation, conventional and advanced technology, solvent refined coals, low sulfur, low BTU gas from coal, fluidized bed combustion. The SO2 emission are controlled using spray dry absorption fuel gas desulfurization system. During the HDA process, hot flue gases with the entrant cold fly ash passed through reaction chamber, where a mix of recycled fly ash, HDA production slurry and lime water slurry is spread and atomization. So, these are the conclusion by which we can reduce the pollution through power plant, especially the thermal power plant.